There was a time when two powers on opposite sides of the Atlantic Ocean shared the same dream. Europe was broken. Cities lay in ruins. Families had lost everything. The streets were silent, filled only with memories of war. Then, from across the ocean, the United States stepped forward. It offered help. It offered money. It offered security and a promise of a better future. Slowly, Europe rebuilt itself. Out of destruction came hope. Out of fear came trust. And between these two continents, a powerful alliance was born. Together, they shaped the modern world. But time changes everything. Trust can fade, interests can shift, and even the strongest friendships can face challenges. Today, that once unbreakable bond is under pressure. This is the story of how foreign policy disagreements began to strain the relationship between the United States and Europe. After World War II ended, Europe was left in ruins. Entire cities lay in ashes. Factories were silent. Railways, bridges, and ports were destroyed. Food was scarce. Energy was limited. Millions were unemployed. Millions more were displaced. Governments struggled to function. Economic collapse threatened political chaos. Seeing the danger, the United States stepped in. In 1948, America launched the Marshall Plan, a massive economic recovery program. Billions of dollars flowed into Western Europe. Factories reopened. Infrastructure was rebuilt. Jobs slowly returned. Currencies stabilized. More than money was restored. Confidence came back. Hope returned. Democracy gained a foothold. Soon after, a new kind of alliance was formed. NATO was created, not just as a military pact, but as a promise. An attack on one would be treated as an attack on all. The goal was clear: protect Europe, deter aggression, and bind the United States and its allies together. Then came the Cold War. The Soviet Union emerged as a rival superpower. Ideologies clashed. The world split into opposing camps. Faced with a shared threat, the US and Europe stood side by side. Military bases expanded. Joint exercises increased. Intelligence was shared. Trade grew rapidly across the Atlantic. American companies invested in Europe. European economies became tightly connected to the US. Political trust deepened. Diplomatic coordination became routine. For decades, their foreign policies moved in near lockstep. Together, they shaped global institutions. Together, they influenced world affairs. But history never stands still. As time passed, the global balance began to shift. New powers started to rise. Former rivals changed. Economic competition intensified. New challenges emerged, not just military, but economic, technological, and political. And slowly, almost quietly, differences began to appear. Shared interests no longer aligned perfectly. Priorities started to diverge. The partnership remained, but the certainty of the past began to fade. At the heart of today's tensions lies a fundamental difference in how power is understood and how it should be used. The United States often believes that leadership requires speed and strength. When a crisis appears, it tends to act quickly and decisively. Military force may be deployed, economic sanctions may be imposed, strong political pressure may be applied. From the American perspective, showing resolve can prevent further instability. Delay, they believe, can allow threats to grow. Europe, however, tends to move more cautiously. European leaders often emphasize restraint. They usually prefer diplomacy over confrontation, long negotiations over rapid action, and international cooperation over unilateral decisions. For many in Europe, lasting peace is built slowly. They believe stability comes from dialogue, mutual compromise, and strong international institutions, not from dominance or force. This difference in approach has surfaced again and again across global conflicts. In the Middle East, the United States has often chosen direct military intervention. European countries sometimes supported these actions through alliances, logistics, or political backing, but frequently with hesitation. Public opinion in Europe was often divided. Governments weighed the costs carefully. In conflicts involving Russia, the contrast became even sharper. Europe focused more on diplomacy, economic engagement, and maintaining open channels of communication, especially given geographic proximity and energy dependence. The United States, meanwhile, pushed for stronger pressure, harsher sanctions, clearer red lines, a tougher stance. Both sides share the same ultimate goal: stability, security, peace. But they disagree on the path to reach it. One side believes strength deters conflict. The other believes patience prevents it. And that difference, subtle but persistent, continues to shape their relationship today. Foreign policy has always been deeply connected to economics. For decades, the United States and Europe championed free trade as a foundation of their partnership. Lower tariffs, open markets, shared growth. Together, they built one of the largest economic relationships in human history. But in recent years, that approach began to change. Trade policy became political. Tariffs and restrictions turned into strategic tools, used not just for economics, but for leverage. The United States imposed taxes on certain European products: steel, aluminum, industrial goods. The stated goal was protection, to shield domestic industries, preserve jobs, and reduce trade imbalances. In other cases, tariffs were used to apply pressure, pushing allies towards specific political or strategic goals. European leaders pushed back. They argued such measures undermined trust between partners, that allies should not treat one another like economic rivals, that cooperation, not punishment, built long-term strength. In response, Europe retaliated. Tariffs were placed on American goods, from agricultural products to manufactured items. This cycle of action and reaction created growing economic tension. Businesses were caught in the middle. Supply chains were disrupted. Investments slowed. Markets reacted with uncertainty. Stocks fluctuated. Confidence weakened. Consumers felt the impact as well. Prices rose. Choices narrowed. What had once felt like a unified economic front began to resemble competition. And competition between allies, even when limited, carries a cost. It erodes trust, it strains cooperation, and over time, it quietly weakens relationships that once seemed unbreakable. Security has always been the backbone of US-Europe relations. From the earliest days of the Cold War, American military power stood as a shield over Europe. US troops were stationed across the continent. Nuclear deterrence was guaranteed. Collective defense became the foundation of transatlantic trust. But today, Europe is asking new questions, important questions. Should Europe always rely on American military protection? Should its security depend on decisions made in Washington? Or should Europe build a stronger defense of its own? This idea is known as strategic autonomy, the ability for Europe to defend itself, respond to crises, and make independent security decisions when necessary. For many European leaders, this vision feels overdue. They argue that Europe's interests do not always align with those of the United States, that dependence can limit choice, that responsibility brings strength. They point to recent crises as proof that Europe must be able to act with or without American leadership. The United States sees it differently. Washington worries that greater European independence could weaken NATO. From the American perspective, splintered defense structures risk dividing resources, slowing responses, and weakening deterrence. The belief in Washington is clear. Unity under one strong alliance is essential for global stability. And so, a major conflict emerges. Europe seeks more independence. The United States seeks tighter alignment. Both believe they are defending peace. Both believe they are preventing conflict. But their paths diverge, not in intent, but in approach. And that difference continues to shape the future of the Transatlantic Alliance. This tension does not affect only the United States and Europe. It ripples outward, shaping the entire world. When these two powers act together, their combined influence is immense. They set standards. They uphold international rules. They help maintain global stability. Their unity sends a clear signal. Cooperation still matters. But when they disagree, a gap begins to form. A power vacuum emerges, not always sudden, but steadily. Other nations are watching closely. Countries like China and Russia observe every disagreement, every delay, every fracture. They look for openings, moments to expand influence, chances to reshape global rules in their favor. As unity weakens, uncertainty grows. Global markets react first. Investors hesitate. Trade routes feel less secure. International agreements become harder to enforce. Commitments lose strength without unified leadership. Conflicts grow more complex. Diplomatic solutions take longer. Military risks increase. For decades, the balance of power has rested on strong US-Europe cooperation. Together, they acted as a stabilizing force, not perfect, but predictable. Now, that balance is under strain. The alliance still exists, the partnership still matters, but the question remains, can it adapt to a changing world? Because as that balance is tested, the consequences will not be limited to one continent or one alliance. They will be felt everywhere. Is the alliance ending? No, but it is changing. The world has moved on. New threats have emerged. Power is shifting. Interests now overlap and sometimes clash. The US-Europe relationship cannot stand still. It must adapt. Its future depends on dialogue and compromise. Partnership does not mean agreement. If adaptation fails, instability grows. One truth remains. This relationship is changing, and its direction will shape the future.